Tonight, I want you to imagine something that sounds like a nightmare at first, and then starts to feel like a rescue mission nobody asked for. A fog rolls in. Not the normal kind that creeps off the ocean or settles in a valley. This fog has weight to it. It hangs too low. It moves like it's thinking. It shows up on nights when the sky should be clear. It swallows streetlights and makes the world feel quieter than it should. People call it weird weather. Officials call it temperature inversions. Conspiracy circles call it the same things they always call it. Chemtrails, HARP, weather weapons, population control, a cover for something bigger. But here's the twist. What if the fog isn't here to kill us? What if it's here to change us before something else arrives? Because there's a rumor that keeps resurfacing in the strangest places. Pilot reports, old coastal radio logs, bizarre social media clips that vanish overnight, and those familiar leaked memos everyone argues about. The rumor says there are UFOs that don't just fly through our air. They drip into it. Slow, deliberate streams of shining mist that evaporate into the atmosphere like liquid moonlight. And the rumor says the fog isn't random. It's a vaccine. Not against a human disease, but against an extraterrestrial appetite. A predator species. Ancient, organized, and hungry, views humans the way we view livestock. Not as equals. Not as neighbors. As food. As product. As biomass. And according to this story, the only reason we've been allowed to build cities, invent satellites, and argue online instead of being harvested already is because someone else got here first. Someone who realized we weren't ready. Someone who decided to immunize the entire planet with a drifting, invisible shield, one fog bank at a time. And if that sounds impossible, remember, this is the same world where people believe we've had secret space programs, underground bases, reverse-engineered craft, breakaway civilizations, remote viewing, recovered materials, and non-human biologics. It's the same world where the most ridiculous ideas have a strange habit of becoming headlines years later, only with different words attached. So let's walk through it. This is the timeline of the fog immunization program. The slow, quiet, global operation hidden behind weather reports, satellite glitches, and a war nobody can admit is happening. 1700s to 1800s. Long before radar and airports and modern UFO waves, coastal communities kept telling the same story. Fishermen described sky lanterns that bled mist. Sailors wrote about glowing ships, hovering above water and leaving a silver haze that made the air taste metallic. Inland, travelers spoke of fogs that arrived out of season, brought headaches, vivid dreams, and a strange calm that lingered for days. Back then, it was framed as omens, ghost lights, sea spirits, divine signs, but the pattern was consistent. The fog came when the skies had been clear, and it came after strange lights. And then came the folklore of something else, tales of thin men and pale mouths that avoided certain villages. Stories of disappearances that stopped, suddenly, after the white air rolled through. In hindsight, believers would say those early fog events weren't natural at all. They were test runs. 1890 to 1919. As industrialization accelerated, the sky changed. Smoke and soot became normal. Cities created their own fog. It gave cover to everything: crime, disease, poverty, and it also gave cover to operations that didn't want to be seen. This is when the night craft stories became more technical. Newspapers ran occasional pieces about airships seen hovering silently, sometimes trailing a faint haze. It was laughed off as mass hysteria or hoaxes. But in private, the idea spreads among certain circles. There are machines in the sky that can control the air itself. And then comes the first whisper of a bigger fear. Not all watchers in the sky are neutral. 1930 to 1944. The pre-war era brings experimentation. Governments study the atmosphere because the atmosphere is the next battlefield. Weather modification theories begin quietly. Radio operators report impossible interference. Some military pilots claim to see lights pacing aircraft at night. Then the fog events start changing. Instead of simple haze, there are reports of fog that seems to seek living things, rolling toward camps, clinging to forests, avoiding open fields as if it prefers cover. Animals behave strangely. Birds go silent, dogs refuse to go outside, livestock panic and then calm down. People exposed to it report odd side effects. Not illness, not like poison gas, more like adjustment, fever dreams that feel like messages, a temporary loss of appetite, a heightened sensitivity to smells, a sense that something is nearby watching. In this version of the story, the fog is being optimized. 1945 to 1952. The post-war world detonates atomic fire and screams into the sky, announcing itself to anyone listening. If there are predators out there, we just lit a flare. This is when the modern UFO era begins. The famous sightings, the rush of reports, the sudden government interest, the birth of official denial. And then, quietly, there's a new pattern: fog outbreaks near strategic locations. Bases, shipyards, research sites, power plants, places a predator species would target first. The conspiracy framework kicks in: recovered craft, secret committees, hush-hush intelligence groups. People argue over names and acronyms, but the important detail in this narrative is simple. The watchers in the sky are not all on the same side. Some are doing reconnaissance, some are doing containment, and some are doing preparation. 1953 to 1963. The early Cold War becomes the perfect cover story for everything. Spy planes, secret tests, experimental aircraft, balloon programs, radar anomalies. In the fog timeline, this is when the dripping begins. Witnesses describe craft hovering low over remote areas, releasing shimmering substances that fall like slow rain but vanish before hitting the ground. Shortly after, fog forms, thicker than normal, colder than it should be, and strangely localized. A hill is covered, but the field next to it stays clear. A coastline disappears, but the city inland stays visible. People who walk through it report a faint sweetness, like ozone mixed with wet stone. And then there are the medical oddities. Unexplained changes in blood markers, mild alterations in immune response, strange antibodies that don't match known pathogens. Believers claim this is when governments start collecting samples in secret. Not to expose it, to understand it. Because if the fog is altering humans, someone needs to know why. 1964 to 1975. This era is defined by escalation. Space race, satellite surveillance, electronic warfare, psychological operations. In the fog immunization narrative, the fog becomes global. Not constant, not everywhere, but appearing in key places in a slow rotation, like a gardener watering a field. Remote villages, industrial corridors, harbor towns, mountain passes, places with heavy human traffic and migration paths. Places where the immunization would spread quietly from person to person, generation to generation. And this is when the first ugly counter-rumor emerges. People report thin beings and mouth-like shapes near fog zones, but they behave differently than classic abduction lore. They don't take people. They avoid them. They hesitate, as if the humans in those areas smell wrong, as if the fog changed the flavor. 1976 to 1989. The world becomes saturated with signals. TV, radio, early networks. The electromagnetic environment gets louder. This is when conspiracy culture starts knitting together. Underground bases, black projects, cattle mutilations, missing time, implants, and that constant theme. Something is being hidden. The fog events intensify around highways and suburban expansion. People post about fog that makes you sleepy and mist that feels electric. Police logs include strange crashes where multiple drivers claim, "I couldn't see and I felt disoriented." The official explanation remains mundane. Weather, human error, bad visibility. But online communities begin tracking it and claim a pattern. They say the fog appears after UFO clusters. They say it hits right before big spikes in missing persons reports, and then those spikes drop again. And then comes the most unsettling rumor of this period. The predator species is already here, but they can't fully feed. They're scouting, testing, taking small numbers, waiting for an opportunity. 1990 to 2001. The digital age begins and something else begins with it, mass observation. Cameras everywhere, satellites everywhere. People can record strange lights and share them instantly. In the fog timeline, the program adapts. Instead of obvious hovering craft, there are high-altitude releases, thin streams that spread into cloud cover, then descend days later as unusual fog. This is also when chemtrail debates explode. Some say it's government spraying. Others say it's corporate geoengineering. Others say it's a cover story for something non-human. In this narrative, both sides are partially right and completely wrong, because humans are seeing the symptom, not the cause. Meanwhile, whistleblower-style stories appear, claims of secret briefings where officials are told, in plain language, that humanity is not at the top of the food chain, that there are things in the dark ocean of space that eat thinking creatures and don't feel guilt about it, and that someone else, call them the Watchers, the Guardians, the Custodians, has been buying us time. 2002 to 2012. This decade is anxiety in a bottle. Constant news cycles, terror threats, financial collapse, the feeling of living on the edge of something. In the fog timeline, that feeling is a signal. People report fog that triggers intense emotional states. Dread, paranoia, sudden grief, sudden calm. This is when believers claim the fog isn't just chemical, it's informational. It carries a kind of instruction, like an immune system update with a psychological component. The theory says the predator species hunts not just flesh, but certain bioelectric patterns. Fear and stress spike those patterns, making humans easier to track and easier to prepare. So the fog's job isn't only to shift antibodies. It's to dampen the signal, to make humans less detectable in whatever way predators detect prey. And then there's a side rumor that ties into everything from remote viewing to the idea of a consciousness field around Earth. Some claim the fog strengthens human intuition, slightly, like a weak shield that helps people sense when something is wrong. A soft upgrade. Not enough to make you psychic. Enough to make you survive. 2013 to 2019. Now we enter the era of constant recording. Drones, doorbell cams, live streams. Everyone becomes an observer, so the fog becomes harder to hide. People catch videos of strange, low-hovering lights in heavy mist. They catch glitter-like particles drifting in beams of headlights. They catch moments where the fog seems to move against the wind. This is also the era of official shifting. Governments begin acknowledging that unidentified objects exist, while carefully avoiding what they are. The public gets a new vocabulary: UAP, not UFO. Anomalous, not alien. In the fog timeline, this is not progress. It's preparation. Because as the predator threat approaches a critical window, the cover story has to soften. A society can't pivot overnight from nothing is happening to we are cattle. So it starts with small truths. Yes, there are objects. Yes, they move strangely. No, we won't tell you more. And during these years, the fog events begin clustering around major population centers more often, like the program is ramping up to mass coverage. 2020 to 2024. This is where the story becomes too real for comfort. A global health crisis changes the world's relationship with air, aerosols, masks, immunity, and trust. Whether people believe the official narrative or not, the psychology is undeniable. The entire planet becomes primed to fear the atmosphere. In the fog immunization theory, that fear is exploited on multiple levels. Because now, if weird fog appears, people argue about it like they argue about everything else. It becomes political, tribal, another reason to fight each other, which is perfect cover. Meanwhile, online reports of unnatural fog surge. People describe fog with an odor like chemicals, or fog that causes immediate fatigue, fog that appears without humidity, fog that forms in tight pockets. And mixed into the noise are the clips that make people pause. Lights hovering, dripping substances, then vanishing upward like something pulling them back into the sky. The theory says the Guardians accelerate their work here. Not because they want to control us, but because the predator window has tightened. The feeding species is closer than it has ever been. And it's sending scouts. 2025 to 2029. In this timeline, the late 2020s become the era of soft contact and hard denial. More disclosures, more leaks, more hearings, more insiders hinting at non-human presence without saying the whole sentence. The fog becomes a repeating seasonal feature in places where it never used to be. Health researchers quietly publish papers about unusual immune patterns. Nothing definitive, just anomalies. Strange resilience in some populations against certain pathogens.
Odd antibodies.
Increased sensitivity to specific environmental triggers. Conspiracy communities claim the fog is building a new baseline human. Slightly altered, slightly reinforced, like a species being prepared to survive a new predator. And the predator scouts respond. In this narrative, that's what the uptick in abduction-style accounts really is: sampling, testing, taste testing. Not random experiments. Not interstellar curiosity. Quality control. They're trying to find pockets of humans who haven't been immunized. Because those humans are the weak link. Those humans are dinner. 2030 to 2033. This is when the fog war starts, not with explosions, but with policy shifts. Airspace restrictions increase. Certain zones become off-limits for training exercises. More satellites go dark for maintenance. Weather modification programs receive expanded funding with vague public explanations. Wildfire prevention, drought control, climate stabilization. Meanwhile, the fog events become more intense and more targeted. Entire stretches of road disappear into white. Whole towns wake up to silence, as if sound is being absorbed. Social media floods with videos, and then those videos are throttled, flagged, or buried. In the narrative, this is the Guardians using the last available stealth window. The more humans realize what the fog is, the less effective it becomes, because fear changes the body's response. Panic disrupts the immunization process. This is also when mass dream phenomena peaks. Millions report similar dreams of being watched from above, of skies opening, of a hunger moving through darkness. In the theory, the fog is now carrying not only immunity but warning signals. Subconscious alerts because governments can't say it out loud. 2034 to 2038. The predator species makes its first undeniable move. Not a full invasion, a harvest probe. It targets isolated regions first. Remote islands, mountain communities, disaster zones where chaos can hide missing people. Officially, the disappearances are blamed on storms, conflict, trafficking, accidents. But patterns emerge. Areas with heavy fog coverage see fewer disappearances. Areas without fog coverage see spikes. Survivors describe the same thing. A pressure in the air, a smell like iron, a vibration that makes teeth hurt. They describe shapes in the dark that don't move like animals. They describe a feeling of being assessed. And then, sometimes, they describe something else. A sudden wall of white fog rolling in fast, as if summoned. The shapes retreat. The air clears. The people live. This is when the Guardians stop being a rumor and start being a necessity. Because humanity begins to understand something horrifying. We are not alone, and not everything out there wants to talk. 2039 to 2045. The immunization reaches its third phase. Humans begin to show subtle adaptations in clusters. Enhanced resistance to certain toxins. Reduced panic response in high-stress events. Slight changes in skin microbiomes that make human scent less appealing to the predator species. And yes, people fight about it. Some call it evolution. Some call it contamination. Some call it a forced transformation. But in this timeline, the reality is simpler. You don't get a vote when you're livestock on a planet that's been marked for feeding. Governments attempt quiet coordination with the Guardian presence. But it's messy. Human institutions are built for power struggles, not species survival. Leaks increase. Insider factions form. Groups that want cooperation, groups that want war, groups that want to surrender, and groups that believe the predators can be bargained with. The fog becomes the dividing line. Those who believe its salvation seek it. Those who believe it's poison avoid it, and the predators exploit that split. 2046 to 2052. The first open sky incidents occur over major cities, brief, shocking events where something massive is seen through breaks in cloud cover, and the footage is too widespread to erase. The predator scouts get bolder. They attempt to feed in larger numbers, but the fog-immunized populations cause problems. The prey is less compliant. The prey triggers fewer of the bioelectric cues the predators rely on. The prey tastes wrong, and in some cases the predators become ill or disoriented after feeding attempts. This is the moment the fog's true purpose becomes clear to anyone paying attention. It wasn't meant to make humans stronger in a superhero way. It was meant to make humans undesirable, to make the planet a bad meal, to make the harvest not worth the risk. 2053 to 2060. Humanity enters an era of uneasy alliance. Not an alliance with the predators, an alliance with the ones who have been dripping the sky. The Guardians reveal themselves in limited ways, often through intermediaries, often through events that leave no room for denial. They don't offer utopia. They offer a choice. Keep fighting each other and be consumed, or stabilize long enough to survive. The fog becomes a tool humans can partially reproduce. Not perfectly, but enough to deploy in emergencies. Entire regions adopt fog protocols, the way they once adopted hurricane protocols. Cities build mist towers. Governments deny what they are, but the infrastructure tells the truth. And slowly, a new cultural myth forms. The fog days. Days when the air turns white, the world goes quiet, and everyone stays inside not because they fear the fog, but because they fear what the fog is keeping out. 2061 to 2075. The predator species attempts a final, large-scale harvest push, believing humanity has been softened by internal conflict and technological distraction. But they miscalculate. The fog immunization has been going on for centuries. Entire generations have been shaped by it. Not only immune systems, behavior, instinct, the subtle ways humans respond to unknown threats. The predators find a planet that no longer reacts like prey. They find a species that looks up when the sky feels wrong, that gathers instead of scattering, that has built strange defensive systems under the guise of climate tech. And they find something else. The Guardians are no longer alone. Because in this timeline, the very act of immunizing Earth sends a message across the cosmos. It tells other species, this world is being protected. And some of those species, neither angel nor demon, just cautious neighbors, begin to choose sides. 2076 to 2100. By the end of the century, the fog is no longer a mystery, at least not to those who live close to the truth. Officially, it's still framed as climate stabilization, atmospheric management, wildfire prevention, pollution control. Unofficially, people know. The fog is the shield. The fog is the scar. The fog is proof that we were marked for feeding and somebody intervened. And the final question hangs over everything like a low white cloud. Why did they save us? Was it mercy? Was it strategy? Did they see potential in humanity? Or did they simply need Earth intact for a bigger war? One where humans are not the prize, but the battlefield. Because the last whisper in this timeline is the most unsettling one. Some insiders claim the fog doesn't just immunize humans against being eaten. It also changes us in ways the Guardians need, making us harder to track, harder to influence, harder to harvest, and easier to recruit, which means the fog isn't only a vaccine. It's a preparation. And if the next century is the age where humanity finally learns what's in the dark between the stars, then the fog was the first step. Not toward surrender, but toward survival. Toward the moment when the predators look at Earth and realize this planet isn't a farm anymore. It's a trap. It's a fortress. And the air itself has been weaponized, quietly, patiently, drop by drop, by things in the sky that understood what was coming long before we did. So the next time you see fog that shouldn't be there, watch how it moves. Watch what the animals do. Watch the sky above it. Because in this story, the fog isn't hiding the threat. The fog is hiding you.